Research out today from motor offence solicitors Jeanette Miller shows we're already too distracted by technology when driving. To find out more, I'm now joined by Jeanette Miller, who's Managing Director of Jeanette Miller Solicitors. Jeanette, how many people do you think have had an accident or near miss because they were distracted by technology while driving? Can we quantify it?
Well, our research shows there's around 2 million Brits who have had an accident or near miss, and they said it's because of being distracted at the wheel by technology. So it is a worrying statistic, and I think I don't know what the solution is. I'm all for increased technology. I'm certainly not against that. I think some of these gimmicks, for want of a better word, that you see in cars like the Tesla are fantastic. But there is a growing problem, and this, I think, is going to be the problem for motorists of the future. And I think part of the problem is the legislation that we have that deals with these issues. The last time the legislation was updated was in 2003. I don't know about you, but back in 2003, even my phone was incredibly different to the one that I have now. And it just hasn't kept up with the advancements in technology. So I think there needs to be law changes.
Well, I can agree with that, absolutely. Recently, my rather decrepit car got smashed into, and so I had a hire car. Now, the hire car was much newer, had lots of wonderful gadgets and gizmos. And, I liked playing with them a lot, but I can see that they were, to some extent, distracting. And clearly manufacturers want to put as many sort of gimmicks and gadgets and gizmos in their car to attract people to buy them in the first place. So what do you think are the biggest distractions then when driving from technology?
Well, our research showed that actually fiddling with the radio is probably one of the top ones, and that's certainly not something that has been defined in law as being illegal. Looking at a sat-nav or looking at a mobile phone, obviously mobile phone use, which is handheld, is specifically unlawful. It is illegal, but looking at your sat-nav isn't. And certainly if you see the onboard computer in a Tesla, that is like having an iPad in your dashboard. It's massive. So, and it because of the way that the legislation is drafted, well, people are saying it is legal to have it there. The legislation talks about the handheld device being illegal, but you can't hold the dashboard in the Tesla. So it leads to a bit of a grey area, really. I think motorists need to have better understanding of what is legal, what is not, and have education on what is sensible. I actually test drove a Tesla back in January, and the sales lady was telling me that it is legal to be using the computer whilst driving. Well, that clearly is not the case, and if I was caught by the police trying to use, Facebook on my dashboard, I would be prosecuted for dangerous driving.
People get prosecuted for eating at the wheel, don't they?
Yeah.
So surely, and one could argue that taking a bite out of an apple is a great deal less distracting than trying to update some onboard computer.
Yeah, there are general crimes which will cover being distracted or not being in proper control of your vehicle. So if you are eating an apple at the wheel, depending on the circumstances, you could fall under a number of different offences. But I think the difficulty we have with technology is there is really only two offences that specify what the position is, and one is in relation to mobile phone use or interactive communication devices. The other is in relation to being in proper control of the vehicle. Now, the proper control offence talks about having a full view of the road and traffic ahead. Well, if you are able to see through your windscreen, arguably you still have a full view of the road and traffic ahead. And again, if you're not holding a mobile phone, then you should not be caught by the offence, the mobile phone offence. But I think if you're going to take a common sense approach, you will probably land yourself up in court for a more serious offence of dangerous or careless driving if caught using some of these fantastic technologies at a time when you're driving and you're, travelling at 30 miles per hour. You shouldn't really be doing that.
You mentioned that we possibly needed legislation to take account of this, but of course, by the time the legislation came in, car technology may well have moved on. I'm thinking, of the legislation about phones and handheld, that of course, my latest iPhone, I can actually ask it to do things. So it may well be that by the time we've got round to the legislation, we can just simply talk to onboard computers and ask them to do stuff, which presumably would be a great deal less distracting than having to actually press buttons.
Yes, I still think 13 years is a long time to wait until you update legislation when you see how quickly technology is advancing. And there is still the argument that you can talk to vehicles. Some vehicles have voice recognition already, regardless of what the iPhone can do. But there's still a distraction caused by doing one thing whilst you're supposed to be focusing on the road ahead of you.
What did you think when you actually looked at the Tesla? You clearly didn't actually...
Oh, it's amazing. I have
you didn't want to
ordered
buy one. You have ordered one.
I've got one coming, yes. So I'm very excited about that. But I'm also very well aware that what I was told by the sales lady, as nice as she was and as fantastic as the car is, there are many things about it which, if I were to proceed and try them out, I would be arrested and prosecuted.
And yet, if you actually sort of pulled over to the side of the road, you could actually also be done if you're stopping in the wrong place, because obviously it's safer then for you to operate something or check the sat-nav, but we're also not allowed to stop it just wherever we want by the side of the road. So,
no, you have to stop safely.
How are we going to solve that?
I don't know. I think, I always say that education needs to be invested in. I think particularly so with the younger generation of drivers. We have a generation who are growing up expecting to be connected at all times. And yes, there are many road safety messages that are sort of sent out there with horrific sort of examples of what can happen. But I think people have a misconception that they're infallible. And there does need to be a stronger emphasis on what is and is not allowed in law and what is and is not sensible, regardless of the law, what's going to be considered to be a danger to other road users or to the driver themselves.
Jeanette, fascinating subject. Thank you so much for talking to us. That's
It's a pleasure.
Jeanette Miller, Managing Director of Jeanette Miller Solicitors.